The preseason is here. Top 10s are here. Deep dives are here. We're going to start with the North Texas Mean Green. We'll look at the top 10 players for this team, as well as look at the schedule, look at some of the numbers. We'll look at some predictions, and we'll talk about what we expect from this North Texas team in 2025. Now, when I put this list together, we started with Brian Nelson. He obviously hits the portal and goes on, and this is a defense that could be really exciting this year. Ethan Wisloski, who's one of the better players on this team, the linebacker, had 57 tackles last year, 5 tackles for loss. A pretty good playmaker for this North Texas defense. And it's a defense that obviously wants to take a step forward, that wants to improve. You look at what they did in terms of scoring defense, yards per game, plenty of room for improvement. That's not to say that there isn't talent available to them, but this is definitely a group that hopes to make bigger strides this season. It's not going to be easy, especially in this conference, but this is a group that can get better. And Ethan Wisloski is one of those guys that is going to make that happen. He's a good playmaker that's been a multi-year starter for this defense. And if he can get other guys on board with the level of play that they expect, this will be a really fun team. With Chandler Morris going to the transfer portal, ends up at Virginia, the quarterback position is kind of up for grabs. And a guy that played a little bit last year, showed some flashes, is Drew Mestemaker. This is a really exciting prospect in terms of his size, 6'4", 211 pounds. We've seen his athletic ability, though you really are going to rely on him for his arm. Now, he will need to find some new receivers that are go-to guys, but North Texas has done a really good job of recruiting to get certain players that you can have depth and the next guy steps up. 462 yards and 2 touchdowns, so you're not going to know exactly what he brings to the table in terms of long term, but this is a guy who is ready for his opportunity. He does have a little bit of a quarterback battle, if you will, with an incoming transfer in Reese Poffenbarger from Miami, comes from Albany before that. And I really like the fit, and I really like that what Reese can do, and he's going to challenge. So it's not a guarantee that Drew wins this job, but this is a guy that this staff is really excited about and thinks that he can do big things for this program. Though they did lose quite a bit in the transfer portal, North Texas did a pretty good job of bringing players in as well. When you look at some of the talent that they'll bring in, they really did a good job on the defensive side of the ball, which maybe speaks to their comfort level offensively. They didn't necessarily need to bring in a ton of players on the offensive side of the ball. They bring in a good amount of talent, and Trey Fields is one of them on defense. Trey Fields had a really big year for Sam Houston, a season where we saw Sam Houston reach new heights at the FBS level. Granted, they are still new, but that was a really fun season for that team. Trey Fields is a really fun player at linebacker. 80 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3 fumble recoveries. Does a little bit of everything. Taking his talents from Conference USA to the AAC provides a different challenge for him, but this is a defense that needs guys that are playmakers. They need to, I think in this age of college football, it's still really hard to slow offenses down with how many things are catered towards the offense. But you need to find ways to be opportunistic. Some of the best teams in college football find ways to get the ball back to their team, whether they're good offensively or even if they're average. If their defense is able to give their offense more opportunities, you're going to score more points. And this is an offense that, as you can see, has no problem put points on the scoreboard. So Trey Fields is someone who brings a veteran leadership to this program. He brings a natural playmaker to this defense, and that's exactly what the Mean Green need. Before we continue with the video, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Take a look. It takes a couple of seconds. It helps the channel grow. We've seen tremendous growth in the last couple of years, and we'd like to keep that going. Doing a giveaway at 10,000 subscribers, so we're hoping to hit that goal this year, and you make that happen. But let's get back to the video. We talked about those playmakers that the quarterbacks need to find. Miles Coleman is one of those guys, a little bit on the small side, 5'6", 159 pounds. This is going to be one of the smaller wide receivers in all of college football, but make no mistake about it, this kid can make plays. 36 catches, 378 yards, 10.5 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns, in really more of a tertiary role. You weren't looking at him as the go-to guy, and you're not going to be throwing a bunch of jump balls to him, but this is someone who can make a lot of noise in the slot, can do a lot of really exciting things, has the speed to make plays. And this is a group that's going to have to step up, and it's not just Miles Coleman, but this is a group that's really exciting because there's a lot of new faces that are ready for their opportunity. They're hungry to show exactly why they're going to be the starters. And Miles Coleman is just one of those guys that should have a really exciting opportunity. Another Sam Houston transfer is cornerback David Fisher. David Fisher is another one of those guys that when I previewed Sam Houston last year, he was someone that I talked about needing to step up in a big way. And that's exactly what he did. Had a really big year, 37 tackles, 6 passes defended, 2 interceptions. That defense was so fun to watch, and he joins Trey Fields on this North Texas team. And this honestly is going to be a really fun defense. They may not take the step that they expect to take. That maybe isn't a guarantee, but this is a group that has a ton of talent and has the ability to make some serious noise, I think, in the AAC. The AAC feels like it's pretty up for grabs right now. There's a lot of teams that are going to be in the mix, and North Texas is looking to put their name there. Now, granted, some of the offense needs to get figured out, but this defense, like we talked about, has to get better as well. David Fisher is one of those guys that comes in from Sam Houston, has that taste of winning. He's ready to take this program to another level. And if this secondary, which we'll talk about this more in a little bit, this secondary was loaded, even after Brian Nelson leaves, you still feel pretty good about what this defense can do. Another wide receiver to pay attention to, Dalton Carnes. This is someone who can really take things to another level with Miles Coleman. Get another guy who's maybe not the biggest receiver, 5'9", 174 pounds. You have guys that are going to do some damage in the short to intermediate routes. Maybe you're looking for that big wide receiver, that deep threat that can step up. You know, you have certain other guys that could potentially do that. You've seen players like that in the past. Damon Ward is one of those guys that's been able to make big plays. DT Sheffield is kind of more in this same category with these guys, so that's a role that needs to be taken over. Whether it's Carnes, whether it's Coleman, somebody has to take that role. Now, he had 371 yards. He averaged 12.8 yards per catch. So fewer catches, more production than Miles Coleman. So maybe he is that guy that will step up, but this is still a really exciting passing attack. There's a lot of new faces that are, again, ready to prove their opportunity, and it's just a matter of what do they do when Saturdays come around. If you look at a reason why North Texas improves in 2025, it's probably because the secondary is so experienced. Evan Jackson is another player to keep an eye on. You know, you bring in David Fisher to help things out, but this is a group, like I mentioned before, that felt like it was in pretty good hands. Even with some of the departures, you feel like you have a good amount of returnees on the 2 deep. You know, losing guys like Ridge Texada is going to hurt Jaden Hill. This is a group that's really still fun to watch because of their production. 59 tackles for Evan Jackson, 3 interceptions, knows what to do when the ball is in the air, and he is someone that can have a major impact on this season. Teams are probably going to know what he's capable of doing, and granted, you do have to face a couple of different teams that run different offenses, but we'll see what happens with North Texas, and we'll see what they can do in 2025 when it's all said and done. Yet another Sam Houston transfer. It feels like we're saying Sam Houston every other one, but Brycian Hayes is someone who can make a big time impact on this defense. The secondary feels like it's in a good place. The defensive line is where you really want to see people step up, and Brycian Hayes brings a disruptive force to this defense. And part of being opportunistic is having a defensive line that can create pressure. Maybe not necessarily getting to the quarterback, but creating pressure. And Brycian Hayes is one of those guys that can do that. 30 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. So he can get to the quarterback. He can be disruptive in the backfield. And that's going to lead to some good opportunities, because if the quarterbacks need less time to throw because they are facing pressure from guys like Hayes, Waslowski, these linebackers and defensive linemen, this is going to be a secondary that eats, and this is going to be a secondary that thrives because of those opportunities. Because when a quarterback's window is smaller, then they're going to have to throw some riskier passes, and that leads for opportunities on the back end, and Brycian Hayes is one of those guys that can help that group as well. Another safety that's ready to take a big step is Quinton Hammond's a little bit bigger at 6'1", 219 pounds, a guy who, again, is a very good contributor for this North Texas defense. 52 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 interception. I really like this secondary. I think that they're going to be a much better group, even without Brian Nelson. That one definitely hurts quite a bit. I feel like this staff really wanted to keep him around. Ultimately hits the portal and goes to a Power 4 program. You really wanted to see him back, but that doesn't take away from what this group could be. I think this group could be a special group, a group that can create turnovers and be a big reason why North Texas has more success in 2025. I'm really excited to see what they can do. And if they can take a step defensively as a unit, it's going to be because they're opportunistic. They take advantage of the mistakes from the opposing team. And while this offense maybe isn't as experienced as it once was, you feel like they're still going to be in a good place. And if the defense can take a step closer to what the offense is, even if that offense takes a step back, Quinton Hammonds and those guys are going to be a big reason why. Now, the rushing attack may not be the most prominent feature of this offense, but it's still going to be a factor. Mackenzie McGill didn't have the best season that you might expect from a running back, but still a pretty productive year. 470 yards, not necessarily the most productive, but he averaged 6 yards per carry and he scored 10 touchdowns. He also was kind of a factor in the passing attack, 11 catches for 103 yards. So this is a weapon that they like to utilize, and it'll be fun to see how productive he can be. 5'9", 202 pounds, so he has a good frame on him to handle life between the tackles, but also he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can be explosive, and that's what this North Texas team needs. They need explosive plays, and if that defense, like I said, can take a step forward and some of these new faces can take a step forward as well, you're feeling like North Texas has a pretty good chance to do something special this year. Finally, let's dive into the schedule. The schedule, there's not a win total out there right now. If I had to guess, I would probably put it at 6 for this team. There's still plenty of question marks on both sides of the ball, plenty to be excited about too. Their ceiling to me is 7-5. Maybe I'm wrong. If this group, there's a lot of questions of certain positions. The linebackers need to step up. Defensive line has some questions, has some new faces, and the offense is going through kind of a retooling. So there's some questions early on. Fortunately, you play Lamar right off the bat. At Western Michigan is a tougher test than I think a lot of people will think. Washington State is probably going to be a loss. The fact that they get Washington State at home is crazy. I think that's really cool. Then you go at Army, which is going to be tough, even though they don't have Bryson Daly. Facing the triple option is going to be tough, and that's where if your running backs, or you're not able to stop the running backs, if your defensive line and your run defense are not up for the task, that's going to be a long game. But that's going to give us a good idea of where this team is at, where they are defensively. You're 4 games in at that point. Maybe you feel like you're in a good place. South Alabama at home, they lost a ton of talent as well, so that'll be a really interesting point for both teams. We'll see where they kind of are. Then you get your first bye week. You get USF and UTSA back-to-back. That's a tough 2-game stretch. At Charlotte, we'll see what Charlotte is at that point. We'll know either are they bouncing back under Tim Albin or are they going to be struggling once again. Another triple option team in Navy comes to town. That's going to be tough. They're going to be one of the best teams in the AAC. And then you get another bye week before you go at UAB, at Rice, and Temple. Now, those are 3 games that are winnable games. 3 of the worst teams in the conference right now, but we'll see what those teams are. So to me, 7-5 feels like a good ceiling. I could see 8-4 if you want to argue that, but to me, 7-5 feels like a realistic ceiling for this team with so many questions. If those questions take a step and get answered, then this 7-5 prediction looks ridiculous. That if this team takes those steps they need to, this could be a 10-win team. But right now it feels like 7-5 because there's so many questions. The floor is 4-8. If everything goes wrong, I don't see them losing to Lamar. They're probably not losing to Charlotte, UAB, Rice, Temple, but one of those teams could be better than we expect. So I don't think that everything's going to fall off, and I feel like Eric Morris has them in a good spot, but you just never know. So we'll see what happens there. A really exciting team. Really curious what you think the prediction is going to be for this schedule. What do you think they're going to do? North Texas is a really interesting team, and it'll be fun to see what Eric Morris and the staff can do to build some of that chemistry, to get some of these younger players or these newer players up to speed. And if they do, this could be a really fun team in 2025.